now. So we are now live and recording. My name is Julia Reichel. I'm the co-chair of the Catskills Addiction Coalition. Today we have the staff of Truth Pharm with Courtney Hayes and two other folks. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves, Alexis and Manny?
Yeah, Alexis Cluse with Truth Pharm, and we have
Manny. My name is Manny Griffin. Hey guys,
hey,
I'm the cameraman. How's it going?
Yes, an important job. The three of them are going to walk us through Shauna Has a Secret, which is a cool presentation on how to understand how drug use and manifests in people's lives and environments. It's really cool. I'm excited to see it. Before we get started, I have a little bit of a few announcements to make. This is a webinar. So this is not a Zoom meeting like the rest of our sessions this week. We still, however, really encourage participation. If you're a guest and you want to talk, raise your hand. There's a hand raising button, or type in the chat that you have a comment or a question. I'll be monitoring the chat for comments. We'd love to bring you in. These guys are really comfortable with interaction, and that's how we like it. So that's great. Let's see what else. This will be an hour. When you do talk, please be supportive and also be critical. We're all accountable here to learning from each other. And it's really important that we all accept engagement with excitement and, well, you don't have to be excited. Grace. We're here to support each other and to learn, but we're not afraid of tough questions. We eat them for breakfast. Let's see what else. We will want your feedback on this session. We'll want your feedback on this session. I've put links to an evaluation form and a link to see a certificate of attendance in the chat box already. Folks, I didn't ask you guys this before. Are we emailing out this PowerPoint to your attendees?
We can email out a PDF of the slides.
Cool, we'll do that. And this recorded session will be posted on our website eventually once we're done. Let's see. I think that's basically it. I'm gonna let these guys take it away.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm super excited to be back presenting this for a second time as part of the Catskills Addiction Coalition Community Action Week. As Julia said in our introduction, my name is Courtney Hayes, and I'm here today with our Executive Director, Alexis Cluse, and our camera person, Manny Griffin, to provide this education series for you. So what we're presenting today is called Shauna Has a Secret. In pre-COVID times, what would happen is participants would come and we would have a bedroom set up, and everybody would have about 5 to 7 minutes to kind of poke through the bedroom. And you would be looking for anything that indicated substance use from the person whose bedroom that is. Of course, we cannot do that right now, so we have found a way to kind of make it work. So we're going to be virtually walking you through that same bedroom setup, and we're going to be talking about all of the things that we find in there and what they mean for the teenager whose bedroom it is and the family. A word of caution before we get too far into this is that this is a pretty sensitive topic, right? So the things that we might be looking at, talking about, could reflect things that you've seen in your own home, whether in the past or very recently, or be reflective of conversations that you've already had or wish you had had the chance to have. So with that said, if anything feels uncomfortable, painful, brings up any other complicated emotions for you, please do not hesitate to reach out in the chat, reach out to Truth Pharm or any other support system that you have in place during or after today's presentation. So let's get started. We're gonna start by taking a look at this bedroom. Very normal teenage girl's room. You know, we have the bed, we have the nightstands, we see a purse, a binder. And this particular bedroom belongs to Shauna. So throughout the presentation, I'm going to be talking about Shauna, her bedroom, and the changes that we've seen in her, and why they're a little bit concerning for us. Know that when I say the name Shauna, what I'm really saying is any teenager, male, female, any age in that kind of adolescent stage of development, any race, socioeconomic status, it's any teenager, possibly even your own. So before we look closer into the bedroom, we're going to look at some of the signs of substance use that might cause you some level of concern. Before we get really far into these, I want to start by letting you know that we do not advocate searching an adolescent's room just because you feel like it or just as part of your routine. What we're really saying here is that if you see these signs that we're going to talk about further, and they're causing you concern, at that point, it might be the best move to do a room search. Certainly as a parent, it's your prerogative to make that part of your routine something that you do, but as part of best practice, Truth Pharm really does not encourage or advocate for that at all. But some of the signs that we've seen maybe in Shauna here recently are a change in friends. So Shauna has been best friends with Mary since they were in 3rd grade. Mary pretty much has grown up in your house. But suddenly we haven't seen her for 8 months, which is really unsettling. If you see a dramatic change in friends, a ton of new people that you really don't know anything about, or the falling off of long-standing friendships, those are things of concern. We're not talking, a couple new friends from a new sport or a club, but really an extreme thing here. Changes in hygiene, adolescents, more girls, I think, than boys, take a lot of pride in their appearance, right? They want to make sure their hair looks nice, they smell good. If suddenly that's not happening, that could be a sign of something bigger going on behind the scenes. The same with a change in grades. If your A student is suddenly a D or an F student, and you really don't have any other explanation for it, it could indicate some substance use going on that you are not yet aware of. Similar changes in appetite or sleep. And again, we're talking about those extremes, going from eating normally to not at all, sleeping normally to not at all, or sleeping excessively. And then a loss of interest in normal activities. Say Shauna, was a cheerleader and she did that 4 days a week after school and suddenly she has stopped. That could be a sign of substance use. That lack of motivation and interest in typical activities is a pretty telltale sign. So with that, we're going to take a little bit of a look into the room, and our first stop is over on the floor, and we're going to take a look at a pair of sneakers.
So shoes lying around on the floor is probably something pretty normal, and maybe you wouldn't normally think to look in them. But I'm going to go ahead and peek around in these shoes and see if there's anything weird in them. And I see like there's this baggie underneath the tongue or the elastic band. And sure enough, there is some substance hidden in there. This particular pair of shoes is an old ratty pair of shoes, and Shauna has figured out a way to conceal a substance in it. But we do like to let people know that there are shoes that are sold with pockets hidden underneath the insoles and or in the tongue of the shoe purposefully. Now they're meant to keep like your money in it if you're going to go for a run or something like that. But teens have discovered these are also great places to hide substances.
So a few more of the warning signs of substance use that we're seeing in Shauna. So odd odors or unfamiliar items. If we take a look around her room as we're going to moving forward, might see some things that you don't recognize or that just look out of place in that bedroom. They don't belong there. A change in Shauna's work ethic. In addition to being a cheerleader, right? She worked a part-time job. She did 15, 20 hours a week after school. And suddenly she stopped, she quit that job. She doesn't want to be there anymore. She's also not helping around the house anymore, which is something she's always done. Unverifiable excuses. So Shauna is telling you she was with her friend Susie last night, but you know Susie's mom, and you just know that wasn't true. You got to talking and it couldn't have happened. If you can't verify the things that Shauna is telling you to be true, that's a concern. What is she up to in reality? The last one that we're going to go into is recent prescribed medication. So it's pretty well established at this point that prescribed medication is the starting point for continued substance use or misuse in the future. So as a parent, if your adolescent is prescribed any psychotropic medication or narcotic painkillers, you should be dispensing those to make sure that they are being used exactly as prescribed and not misused by an adolescent in your home. And with all that said, sometimes there are absolutely no signs at all. And the question after we go through all these is always, could it be something other than substance use? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. It could just be the signs of being a teenager. At this age, there's so much going on developmentally, socially, they're just changing all the time. Adolescents are changing constantly. So it could just be some of those changes. Or it could be trauma, something from the past kind of manifesting now, a trauma recent that you don't know about. Or it could be a sign of an underlying mental illness. That's a really important thing to consider at this stage, because a lot of common mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, in particular, manifest during this adolescent stage of development. So now that we know the signs and how to recognize them, we're going to tell you a little bit about when and why to search a room. Like we said, we don't advocate for searching a room just because or as part of any routine practice. But we do support a parent's decision to search a room if you've noticed some of the extreme signs of substance use that we've already talked about. We also encourage a quick search of a room if you've been given information from a trusted source. That longtime friend of Shauna's comes and says, hey, I haven't really seen or talked to Shauna much in the last few months. I'm a little worried. I think something's going on. You might want to look into that a little further, and doing a room search could be a way to start. If stories don't add up, again, those unverifiable excuses, if Shauna is telling you that she's doing things, but you check in or hear from another source that it's just not possible for her story to be true, you want to investigate. You want to look into why she's not being truthful and what's really going on. And the last one is if your gut tells you something is wrong. There is such a space for parent intuition here. If you feel like something is going on with your teen, please do not hesitate to follow up. That parent intuition is huge. And then some of the specifics, right? So how do I do a search? And there are two really important rules as far as this goes. One is you search when your child is away from the home and not expected back soon. You do not want them to get off the school bus, come in, and see you up to your elbows in their dresser drawers. And the other one is with no disturbance to their personal items. You are not going in there and just tearing things up. These are important because if you get caught in the process of a room search, whether you're actively in there or if you've just caused a disturbance to items, Shauna knows you were there. She knows you were poking through her personal things. And that is not the way to set up a healthy, productive conversation going forward. What's really going to happen is that Shauna's going to be mad. You're going to be mad because she's mad, and everything's going to be a whole mess after that. So we're going to take another look at the bedroom, starting over here with the laundry basket and the waste basket on the floor.
So we have, Shauna has a laundry basket and a waste basket in her room. And these are places that parents might not typically search because they're kind of gross. And you wouldn't assume that your loved one is going to put things in with garbage or dirty clothes. But it's actually a really common place to hide things for that reason. It's not a place that parents typically think to search. Parents usually will go through dresser drawers and things like that, like Courtney said, but not hampers and waste baskets. So I'm going to take a look here and see what's going on in Shauna's waste basket, mainly just dirty clothes. You might want to, especially with socks, kind of feel them and see if there's anything in them. And I find this glasses case, which seems to be a little bit out of place. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. So this is concerning. What this is called a boat or a slip. This is a device that people who use substances and inhale them will use. They'll actually put the substance on this, hold it, light a lighter underneath it, and then they'll use either a straw or a pen with no guts in it to inhale those, the fumes, the vapors that come off of the surface of that aluminum foil. So this is a super concerning thing to have found in Shauna's waste basket. Continuing on into the waste basket. Again, most parents aren't going to search in the waste basket because it's gross, but we're going to go ahead and take a look. And in the waste basket, there's, guts to pens, which we'll talk a little bit about later. Some aluminum foil bits. This is concerning because aluminum foil is frequently used to pass substances or to wrap them in for sales. And they can also be used, as I showed you previously, to inhale substances off of. Here's a cap. We'll talk a little bit more about those later, and an empty substance container. Nothing in this cup. This cup has been in here forever, so I'm probably concerned and think that's kind of weird. And sure enough, there's a baggie of a substance hidden under the sleeve of the cup. So these are all things that, you know, maybe you wouldn't have even looked in a garbage basket, but Shauna has caught on to the fact that we don't usually look in garbage baskets. And then underneath the liner, there's a baggie of substance as well.
Okay, so now that we found a few things in Shauna's bedroom, we're going to talk about some other kids. Specifically, what kinds of kids are using drugs these days? And the answer is pretty extensive, because it's kids whose parents use, kids whose parents have never used drugs, kids with little supervision, kids with a lot of supervision, kids with straight A's, star athletes, and literally any child in between. It really doesn't matter. There is no clear-cut answer to this question. The answer is simply that kids are using drugs. There's no type, there's no one kind, but the greatest danger is assuming that it will never be your kid and moving through your journey as a parent without this information and without looking into these sort of concerns. So we're going to take a look back into the bedroom, and we're going to look at some of the mystery items that are floating around.
So Shauna has a notebook on her bed. It doesn't seem like anything out of the ordinary. She draws on stuff like a lot of teens do. I open it up. There's, you know, a drawing of a mushroom and a marijuana leaf. Could be concerning, might not be concerning. You know, teens do these things sometimes just to look like they're into these things, and sometimes they do it because they are into these things. This piece of aluminum foil fell out, and you see that it has the shape of a pill in it. This is, of course, very concerning, and this is what I was talking about earlier, that sometimes aluminum foil is used to protect an item. So to keep a pill dry in a pocket, like maybe some student in the school sold this to Shauna, and to keep it dry in their pocket, they had it wrapped in aluminum foil, and then they would pass it to Shauna. So this is definitely a concern. It's empty now, but it looks like it had a pill in it at one point in time. There's also this little note, and, you know, as a parent, you might want to like protect some boundaries of privacy in terms of opening notes and letters. You might think like, I don't want to go that far. I don't want to read what they're saying to each other. But if you were to open this note, especially notes that are very small like this, you might find actually there's nothing written in it, and that's kind of weird, right? Well, what we've learned actually in the process of doing these presentations is that teens very frequently pass notes in school, but they're notes used to pass substances from one to another. So same with teachers, like a teacher might not say, give me that note, I want to read it. They would just say, don't pass notes. But actually in reality, what they might be doing is just passing a substance, not writing a note in it.
So there are some other harder to identify and place mystery items that you might see in your home, in a bedroom. Without context, without seeing them together, they might make really no sense at all, or they might seem really innocent. So one example is these small black rubber bands that we see on the nightstand. So our Shauna is a young girl. She might use those to style her hair. That might be something totally innocent. But if you have a young boy in your home or a young girl who doesn't tend to style her hair, these little rubber bands are a concern because what they're used for is to hold baggies of heroin or other substances together. Some of the other items that you might find hard to place or recognize are these little caps. So they're often orange or clear plastic. They really just look like something, you know, that might have fallen off of something else, and you might just pick it up and toss it. But what these are the caps for syringes. So these are certainly a concern if you find them scattered throughout a bedroom or in your home. Aluminum foil, like we've touched on, those little tiny bits and pieces. Also wax paper is used to wrap and transport substances from one person to the other. So I find little torn up bits of those two things. That's a little strange and concerning. Why else? You know, what other reason would an adolescent need to have these little bits of aluminum foil and wax paper in the room? The last mystery item is a cotton swab, but if you look at this one, you see that the ends have been torn off, so it's just a stick at this point. What happens here is that cotton is used as a filter, specifically when you're injecting substances. So the substance is prepared, the cotton is placed on top of it, and then the syringe is inserted, and the substance is drawn up through the cotton so that it acts as a filter. And these little cotton swab ends are the perfect size and readily available for that purpose. So if you see them, you know, scattered around the bathroom in your Shauna's bedroom, that's a little something to be concerned about and ask some questions about. Moving on into a little tiny bit of research about this topic, we ask how many kids are using drugs these days. And according to research from about 2015, the answer is 18% of high school students. And from this study, they specifically report taking a prescription drug without a prescription. What's really interesting about this number in this research is this 18% number actually stays pretty consistent across generations, but what has changed is the substance being used. So if you were back, if you were in school back in the 70s, 80s, there were probably 18% of high school students using substances, but they were using marijuana or drinking alcohol. What has changed over the course of a generation is that students now are more likely to be taking prescription drugs without a prescription. I know this to be true from my own experience in high school. I don't recall my peers talking about smoking or drinking. I recall them talking about taking pills, whether it was Adderall that was not theirs or other prescribed painkillers. So this research really stands in line with what my own experiences were. I'm going to take another look back into Shauna's room. Just down here under the bed, we see her nice, cute little carpet. Everything matches well, but if we lift up her bed skirt a little bit, we see this baggie hiding under here with what looks like marijuana in it, and it's a fairly large amount, which is certainly a little more concerning than some of the other things we find, because if we see a large amount of marijuana like this, it suggests that it's beyond Shauna's personal use. That's a lot there. And it might indicate that she has moved from using substances to also selling them in order to support the habit that she's found herself with. So we're going to look again at some of the stuff in the room. We're going to focus in on Shauna's bedside table. If you see this, what we have on our video here is compared to the photo. You can see that Shauna's really added some things to her table. She's done a lot of online shopping while she's home due to COVID. So we're going to explore some of the items that she has on her table.
So some of the things, as Courtney mentioned, have changed. So I'm just kind of go through what I find here. So in here are a bunch of pens, which might not normally be alarming, but a bunch of the guts have been removed from these pens. Now, Shauna is no longer a fidgety 8 or 9-year-old who might tear apart pens just because they're bored. Shauna's a teenager, and this is a little bit unusual. So pens with the guts removed are actually used in multiple ways. They can be used as a straw to snort crushed pills. They can be used as a straw to inhale substances. And we were told at one of the presentations that we gave by a teacher, in fact, that pens that are solid color have actually been used to transport substances as well, student to student. So they'll remove the guts of the pen, put the substance inside of the pen, and then give the pen to a friend. A teacher seeing that would be, you know, not think that anything was going on. They're just giving a friend a pen. So pens with the guts removed are very much concerning. We also see in here a prescription bottle. Now, Courtney mentioned if your loved one has been prescribed a psychotropic medication or a narcotic painkiller, those really should be dispensed by an adult. And I know, like, having a teenager, you want them to have some level of independence, but the reality is these substances can be so tempting and so pleasurable to use that it's really too much of a responsibility to leave on a teen's shoulders, and it's really smartest if the parent dispenses them. In this case, this one does not have Shauna's name on it, so I know that it's not even Shauna's prescription, and of course that is very concerning. Another thing that I see here is a box of non-brand name Imodium. This might seem completely innocent, like maybe Shauna had stomach problems and was taking this. Imodium can actually be used in multiple ways. If somebody is experiencing opioid withdrawals, they'll use Imodium to stave off some of the symptoms of withdrawals. Also, Imodium can be used in a very dangerous way. Large doses of Imodium actually act like an opioid to the person receiving them, so they'll actually get the opioid effects mentally. Sadly, though, it can also cause like a lot of organ failure issues, so that has happened to teens who have done this. But Imodium is cheap, so they might buy like 5 boxes, pop them all, get the opioid effect they're looking for, but there are other troubles related to that. Switching over to the other side, I'll show you a couple other items. Now, I have noticed that Shauna has had this tea in her room forever, and she loves this tea. So at first I didn't think anything of it, but it's been here forever, untouched, which is really weird. It sounds like a real tea. It's got like liquid in it, so it's kind of weird. It's weighted like a tea, but these days, all the things that you can buy like this can be bought with hidden containers in them. This one was purchased on Amazon, and the top just screwed off easily. And inside of this bottle that really sounds and feels like Arizona iced tea is actually the items that you would need if you were injecting substances. So the cotton that Courtney talked about, this is a tourniquet or a tie-off, more cotton, and in the bottom of there was a baggie of a substance. Same thing with the Pringles. I know Shauna loves Pringles, but this particular can of Pringles has been here for months, and the Pringles are even in it. So she's not eating them, which is weird. And again, these containers are sold to appear to be the real thing, even with the real snack inside of them. And yet this one is also one that has a hidden container, so it's really used to conceal substances. And this one also has a tourniquet, a lighter, and some cotton inside of it. So if you see a snack, something like this that's been sitting around forever and seems untouched, that would be peculiar, and you might want to check into that. I want you to know that those snacks that come like 10 for $10, like the Teddy Grahams and the little Oreos and the little plastic cups, all of those are also sold like this with hidden containers in them, and also the actual snack at the top of it. So really, parents could be really duped by that.
We're going to look over at this side, this bedside table again. We see this, cute little container, nothing unusual for Shauna. She likes little knickknacks to decorate her space. If we open it up though, we see a rolled joint, a little bit of marijuana left over in there. Nothing otherwise super concerning for us. And then we see some more snacks. Shauna's a really snacky young girl. So we see some M&Ms. This is not one of the hidden containers that we were talking about, although it probably could be found if one looked for it. But we're gonna pop this open and look inside it anyway. We dump it out. We see one of those plastic caps that we talked about that is to cover a syringe tip, a bunch of those little cotton ends popped off of a cotton swab, and some little pieces of foil. Again, if you don't really know what these are, it kind of just looks like some garbage, some junk, you might throw it away. But with the right context and the right understanding in mind, we know that these things are actually really concerning and suggest that Shauna is probably using some substances that she's injecting at this point. So exactly what substances are teens using? We know that 18% of teens are using something or another, but what is it? And the answer is really all of them. Alcohol, cannabis or marijuana, synthetic cannabis or marijuana, inhalants, prescription pills, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, molly, acid, and Imodium or cough syrup can be used in a similar way. Whatever illicit substance you can imagine, somewhere some adolescent is using it, including our Shauna, as evidenced by what we're seeing in her room. But what do all these things look like, right? If you've never seen heroin, methamphetamine, or molly, you might not know what it is. If you just see a little pill sitting around, how do you know? And the answer is Google is your friend. Look it up. If you have access to a phone or a computer with internet, you have all the world's information at your fingertips. You can look up any substance and find images of what it looks like. And for pills specifically, all of them are stamped with some combination of letters and numbers. If you type in the little white pill, XYZ123, whatever it is stamped with, you're gonna get a website that is gonna tell you exactly what that pill is, what it's used for, what the dose of that pill is, and what the effects of it can be. So if you find something you're not sure about, look it up. It's totally okay to do that. Back over on the other side of the room, we're looking at Shauna's other nightstand and we see a phone box.
So this phone box has been around for quite a long time. Like this is like 2 versions ago of phones for Shauna. Phone boxes are actually great places to hide things. 1, because most people don't throw them away for whatever reason. And 2, because they have multiple layered compartments. You might open it up and be like, oh, there's nothing in here, whatever, and move about your business. In this case, this phone case actually has quite a few things. So what this is, what we would call this entire thing is a cook kit. So as Courtney mentioned, it appears to us as if Shauna has probably moved on to IV injection of substances. And I will talk to you a little bit about what we're finding in this cook kit. So we see now, like when we see this orange cap with a syringe, it's like, oh, now I know what that orange cap is. It belongs to the top of a syringe, where normally out of place, it might be hard to understand what that was. And we see a spoon. Spoons missing in your home is a real concern. Many parents, like myself, will report that for a long time they were like short on spoons in their house and they didn't understand why. And this is why sometimes. So this spoon in particular, I'm not sure if you can see that very well, but the back of it has like some blacking on it. It actually indicates that it's been heated up with a lighter multiple times. And then on this side,
it is hard to see. I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you have a picture of this case? Like, because the PowerPoint is making it difficult to see. Oh, there we go.
There it is. Yep. And the spoon has this weird residue ring on it, which you can see in the video maybe and in the picture on the presentation. This is a spoon. I'm sorry to admit it's actually from my home. And so as a parent, I thought that like this came from having spoons with milk left in them for a long time. And I didn't know for a very long time that actually what it is it's a spoon that's been used multiple times to cook heroin in it. And it causes this like really hard, almost impossible. I mean, I can't scrub these off of my spoons. I still have them like this, but it causes this permanent kind of damage to the spoon that shows that heroin was actually in it. Now, the way that they would use this is they would put their substance in it. They would put heroin in it. They would add liquid to it, and then they use a lighter to light underneath it. And then that causes the substance to dissolve with the liquid, gets all bubbly. And then they're going to drop a cotton swab in it, as Courtney described. And then they're going to draw the liquid up through the cotton swab because it acts as a filter so they don't get any like chunks into what they're drawing up. And so when we find a kit like this, this is super, super concerning. This would indicate that Shauna or someone has progressed to IV drug use. We already talked about that.
Here's another look at that kit with the slipper, the boat in it that we spoke about earlier on. It's just a makeup bag. It comes out of Shauna's purse. We have some pretty normal makeup in there, and then rolling papers. Probably matches up with that rolled joint and the marijuana that we found on the bedside table. And then some more kind of mystery items are over here on the bed. Specifically, the belt is what we want to take a look at.
So I've noticed this belt laying around, and it's really weird because it seems like it's always in this position, which is an odd size, and I don't ever see Shauna wearing this belt. Anytime you find belts that seem to be that they've been used at this very small size, and especially belts that have this quick release method where you can tighten and loosen a belt with like pretty much one hand, this would be a concern. What these are used for are, tourniquets so that the person can inject and have their veins pop out better. So that would be a concerning thing. Same thing with shoelaces removed, and Courtney already explained the Q-tips.
So we've seen a lot of things floating around this bedroom if we've explored it, but what we want to really focus on are the items of greatest concern. So razor blades, if you find razor blades floating around the room, those are used to cut pills or substances into the dose or portion that you need. Pens with guts removed, we've seen them, we've talked about them. They're used for multiple things, including snorting or inhaling substances, or even passing them from peer to peer in a school setting. Mirrors or flat surfaces with scrape marks suggest that that surface has been used to press and crush pills or other substances for the purpose of snorting them. Those small stretchy rubber bands that are used to hold baggies of substances together. Spoons or missing spoons. You can always find a fork but never a spoon. You might want to question what's going on there. Syringes, of course. And then the last one is packages received in the mail. If your teen, if Shauna is getting some things that you just don't know what she's ordering, she never shows you or talks about her packages, she just picks them up on the porch and runs down to her room, that could be a concern. It's really hard for some of us who are not quite as tech savvy to imagine, but anything, including substances, can be purchased on the internet. Adolescents, especially, who are a little bit better at navigating these things, can easily find whatever they want and get it shipped right to your front door without you really knowing about it. So we're going to take another look at Shauna's bed, some of the things that she has over here. We see some pillows, a stuffed dog.
So Shauna has this stuffed animal, and she's had it since she was really little. So like, to me, it's kind of comforting to see it on her bed. But I might give it a feel because stuffed animals are an easy place to hide substances. And sure enough, like, this ear feels weird. And it does, in fact, it looks like Shauna has cut the ear of the puppy and is hiding baggies of substances inside of this puppy's ear. And stuffed animals are really common places to hide substances because they could be hidden in a place like that or amongst the stuffing so that they're harder to find. If I continue searching, which I should do, oh, it sounds like Shauna has something in her pillowcase, and sure enough, here is a baggie of or a container of marijuana. But it is a large quantity. Either Shauna has enough money to save up her money and buy enough substance to have for quite a long time, which is unusual, or Shauna has progressed to selling substances at this point.
Shauna did some redecorating. She doesn't have this pillow anymore, but if you look at the one in the picture, you see that there's a little kind of flap that is separated there, and tucked up under it, there is a joint just kind of hanging out there.
So prior to having this talk with Shauna, there's a few things that we like you to be aware of. I need you a little bit. There you go. First thing, so we have shown you Shauna's room, and we don't we've put this extreme on display so that we can expose parents to all of the different types of paraphernalia, so that if you ever see them, you would be able to recognize them. Certainly most teens are not where Shauna is. Like, Shauna actually has progressed to a place that is extremely concerning. It's unlikely what you're going to find in your teen's room if you were to do this type of a search. It's unlikely that you're going to find things to the extent that we have in Shawna's room. So let's say you search your teen's room, you find a couple things and a couple questionable items. Before you have this talk with your teen, you're not going to assume the worst. Don't go into this thing thinking, oh my gosh, this is just like Shauna's room and my teen is injecting heroin. Like, don't assume the worst. Go into this with an open mind and really with the goal of exploring this topic with Shauna and trying to find out what's going on with Shauna. The next thing is to make sure that you understand the differences between substances, first of all. So if I had explored Shauna's room and the only thing that I found was maybe the rolling papers and maybe the joint in the tin on the bedstand, certainly something that I'm going to be concerned about, certainly something that I'm going to want to have a conversation with Shauna about, but not anything in comparison to what we have found today in Shauna's room, which is evidence of IV substance use, probably heroin. We found stamped baggies, which would indicate that is a substance that's being sold like heroin or meth or cocaine, and pills. So it's a completely different approach and conversation that we're going to have based on the substances that we find in our teen's room. The next thing is methods of administration. As Courtney mentioned, 18% of teens report that they are taking pills recreationally without a prescription. There's a big difference between a teen taking a pill or a teen crushing a pill up and snorting it, or a teen cooking a pill down and injecting it. Every change in a method of administration actually increases the risk of both overdose and dependence or addiction. And so the way that Shauna is using these substances will also change the way that I'm going to have this conversation with Shauna or gauge my approach. The other thing that we want to talk about is habit versus recreational or exploratory. So it is very normal for teens to explore substance use, even if they're not the teen who is using pills recreationally, say once a month. They might be the teen who just tried one thing one time. Teen exploration of substances is very normal. Recreational use of some substances is also normal. Advancing to the point where the teen has to use the substance every single day to function, or is doing like a wake and bake, and then they come home from school and they smoke, and maybe they even smoke in their car during, lunch break. This is a completely different conversation because we're talking about the person developing a dependence and a habit of the substance rather than using it recreationally. And then what's normal versus abnormal? We've talked about this a lot. Courtney's going to give you a reference at the end of NIDA, which is an amazing website that talks about what is normal exploratory substance use for teens. Because again, like Courtney mentioned, back when I was in high school, there were 18% of us who were exploring substances. That's a pretty normal thing versus what is abnormal is what's going on in Shauna's room. So again, prior to the talk, I'm going to keep a sense of scale in mind. Did I find a joint or some rolling papers, or did I find what's going on in Shauna's room right now, which is a completely different conversation? So I'm going to scale my conversation, my response, and how I'm going to approach this topic according to what I have found. The next thing we recommend is that you withhold judgment. This might be really hard in the case of Shauna's room because Shauna has mass quantities of things going in multiple areas of her room. But again, if we were to search a normal teen's room, we're probably not going to find this much stuff. If we were to find a couple things, you never know. It might not be Shauna's stuff. Shauna might have a friend who comes over every day after school. They might have developed a dependence. They might be terrified to take this stuff home with them because, maybe they get beat if they do. So Shauna might be holding this for a friend. You don't know until you have the conversation. So withhold judgment until you talk to Shauna. Get a naloxone or a Narcan kit for sure in your house is almost like everybody should have that anyways, but especially if I suspect my teen is exploring substance use, I'm going to want to get a Narcan kit in my house. Narcan is a medication that will reverse an opioid overdose, so it's a life-saving tool that you should have in your home, especially if you think your teen is exploring with substances. And most importantly, before you have this conversation with Shauna, as hard as it may be, you want to wait until all your anger is gone. You are going to have a multitude of feelings, especially if I'm Shauna's parent. I'm going to have a multitude of feelings about this. I could be scared. I could be upset. I probably have a lot of anger too. That's not the way that I want to approach Shauna. And Shauna in particular has apparently been doing this for quite a long time. If it takes me 2 or 3 days to cool down before I talk to Shauna, that's okay. Shauna has been doing this for a long time. Waiting a couple days is really not going to change anything. Wait until all your anger has gone. Wait until you're calm and in a good mental space to be able to talk to Shauna so that you can have a healthy conversation with her.
Take another look at some of the things in the bedroom. So we look at Shauna's jacket. No, not unusual. It's chilly, right? Sometimes you may find things tucked into the liner or in little mystery pockets. But Shauna has made things a little easier on us. We're just gonna look in her pockets. We see one of those stamped baggies of a substance that we've seen in a few other places, and then over in her other pocket, you see some blunt wraps, some garbage, and further in, here's another one of those plastic caps. This is the white one that indicates that there was a syringe present somewhere at some point, because this is the end cap to it. Again, over on Shauna's bed, back behind her puppy, she's got a little baseball cap hanging out here. Nothing, unusual or concerning, but if we flip it over, tucked up under this little brim in the hat is the stamped baggie. Much like shoes have little zipper pockets or concealed areas these days, so do hats. There's, compartments in the liner, in the brim, deliberately made to not necessarily hide substances, but store other similarly small items. Sure. If you want to do that. So what we see in the picture here is actually an item that we don't have in our kit for setup, so I apologize for that, but what you're looking at is, a CD. In 2021, a little concerning. No one's using CDs anymore. But it gets a little bit worse. If we flip this over, if we had opened up that CD case, what it actually is a scale. This is, again, an indicator that Shauna has progressed from personal substance use to selling, because scales are used to measure out the portion of the substance. And if we look in Shauna's bedroom, while we don't have the CD, we do have 2 other versions of scales that we find. This one just looks like a Bic lighter that flips up from the top. But if you open it up, it's a very small digital scale. So she's not, measuring and weighing out large quantities with this, but measuring nonetheless. And this one, a little old school, but it's meant to look like an iPod. It's not very good quality. You would probably know this is not an iPod and maybe reach for it and pop it open. And again, another digital scale. So this just goes to show you the many, many ways that this particular tool can be designed to be hidden in a space.
So again, going back to having your talk with Shauna, you want to make sure that you can keep a cool head and have control, stay calm, and speak calmly with Shauna. Something that a lot of parents don't realize when they go into having these conversations with their loved one is your teen might also be very afraid and worried about what's going on with them. Many, many, many people that we talk to who have become addicted to substances can relay the day that they realized that they were addicted, and it really developed as a surprise to them. And many, many young people will tell us that they really wish they could have talked to their parent, but they were so afraid of the parent's response, so afraid that they would be in trouble, they would be judged, they would be insulted, that they just didn't know how to have that conversation with their parents. So be aware that your teen approaching this, Shauna might also be really afraid about what's going on in her life. And if I approach her in anger and I'm also approaching her freaked out, I'm not going to help calm Shauna down and be able to have a healthy conversation with her. So it's really important to keep a cool head, speak calmly, make sure that you're creating a space that Shauna is going to be able to feel comforted by your strength. Again, start with your child's health and safety first and foremost. Especially with Shauna. Shauna is engaging in activities that are impacting her health. Shauna is most likely addicted to these substances at this point. This is not something that I'm going to be able to ground out of Shauna. There's literally no amount of discipline that I can invoke as a parent that is going to change this health situation for Shauna. And so I'm going to want to approach this topic with Shauna being first and foremost concerned about her health and safety. Use that in my tone, use it in my language, and talk that way with Shauna. Show love and concern, not anger. Again, comforting her so that she'll want to open up with you and talk to you about what's going on. And it's important to remember it's not about you. It's really hard as a parent going into this to not question everything you've done, not question why the heck didn't Shauna listen to you when you told her not to use drugs. And you might really, as a parent, as we do often with our kids, want to say, how could you do this? I told you not to, or this really hurts me. That's really not going to help Shauna get to the place that she needs to be. At this moment, remember that it's not about you. Focus on Shauna and Shauna alone, and get the support and care that you need for yourself outside of the room with Shauna. The goal is to have a conversation that's going to be able to provide you with answers. Again, Shauna's situation is very extreme, but perhaps in your teen's room, you find a couple things that are concerning, maybe a prescription bottle, maybe an indication that some pills have been crushed. You really want to know, has your teen been using these pills multiple times a day for several days in a row or several months in a row? Or is this something they just tried one time? Is it something they do on occasion recreationally? You want to know those things so that you can advise your teen in a healthy way about how to proceed and what they can do to get help.
Another look into some of the things in Shauna's room. Don't think this is in her purse anymore. She got rid of this, doesn't like that style anymore. But there was, again, another little cosmetic bag. And if we open it up, we see a little baggie of marijuana and a pipe from which to smoke that from.
So again, it's a good idea when we have this conversation with Shauna to keep some reserve in mind. So let's say I found what Courtney just showed us, and that's the only thing that I found. A little makeup bag, a pipe, and some marijuana. Again, I'm not saying that isn't something to be concerned about, but if that were the only thing that I found, and I as a parent chose to ground Shauna for 6 months, that's going to be kind of problematic for me going down the road if Shauna's substance use progresses into something worse, because then what do I have next? So you want to keep some reserve in mind. The next thing that you might want to consider, especially if you find things like this that we found in Shauna's room, or if you find evidence of pill use or some kind of stronger substance, you might want to consider granting your child some immunity right from the get-go. Sit down with Shauna and say, look, Shauna, I'm here to have a conversation with you. My goal is not to punish you or to ground you for this, because I'm really concerned about what's going on in your life. I'm hoping we can just have a conversation about what's going on and we can find some solutions. I promise I don't intend to punish you or ground you as a result of this conversation. I just want to have a conversation that we can focus on your health and safety. Verify persistent claims. Again, if we only found a couple things and Shauna is swearing up and down it wasn't hers, maybe explore what's going on. Maybe it is her boyfriend's or her girlfriend's. Maybe it is someone else's. Maybe that teen needs your support and to have the same conversation with them. But if you don't verify the claims, you're not going to know if it really is Shauna's or not. Next thing, don't let your teen stump you with remarks or questions. So invariably, Your teen is going to say to you, I know you probably did the same thing when you were a teenager. That might be the case, might not be the case. Don't even respond to it. Simply say to your teen, look, today we're talking about you and we're focusing on what's going on in your life. Another day, I might be willing to have that conversation with you about what I did as a teen, but today is not about me, it's about you. Focus on the behavior and not the person. This is really, really important because especially if they have developed a dependence, they're probably already starting to judge themselves and feeling pretty awful about themselves. So you don't want to contribute to that in any way. You want to focus on what Shauna is doing and what she's engaging with, not using language like junkie, druggie, drug addict, or anything like that, because it's only going to cause Shauna to feel more shame, which might lead to more substance use. And then lastly, most importantly, make a plan and follow through. You're probably going to want to develop that plan with Shauna because you want it to be something that Shauna also feels like will help her. So sit down. If you tell Shauna, tomorrow I'm going to call some substance use counselors, or tomorrow I'm going to call your pediatrician and see what we can do to help you. Make sure that tomorrow you do that so that Shauna knows that you have her back and you're going to follow through on this plan.
And the last thing we want to stress is that there are places to turn to for help if you find yourself in this situation, concerned about your own teenager who may be exploring substances. So you can reach out to your school health office, school counselor, any local addiction recovery services, your pediatrician, or an online resource that's really easily accessible is NIDA for Teens and Partnership for Drug-Free Kids. They both have really good comprehensive information about what's normal, what constitutes a greater health and safety risk for your teen. So those are excellent places to turn to as a first step. And also Truth Pharm or the Catskills Addiction Coalition. Both of these organizations are absolutely prepared to answer any questions, help prepare you to have this conversation with your teen, or to identify further resources if they're needed. So do not hesitate to reach out to any of these places and know that at the end of the day, you are not alone. You are certainly not the only parent going through this. There are many who have experienced this before and they have learned from those experiences and often are available to answer questions and help guide you through with the lessons that they've learned along the way. And
I want to ask if there.
that we have.
Yeah,
So,
that was amazing.
I'm
I
happy
learned
to answer
a
some
bunch of stuff.
questions.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes. I did already goose the chat to see if anybody has any questions. Any particular questions? I thought there was a lot of stuff in there I had no idea about, like the spoons thing with the ring. Just had never given that a second thought. If you're interested, raise your hand and, oh, there we go. Okay. Nope, I've raised my own hand.
If there aren't any other questions, I can show you a couple other things around the room that are not seen throughout the presentation that I think are very interesting, if that's okay. So one is, again,
yeah, do it. We can go a little bit over.
Okay, do we have a minute? All right. Over here on the bedside table, right? So we see a roll of tape. Not really that concerning, right? Shauna likes doing little crafts and artsy things, but that tape can easily be used to tape substances under surfaces. So there's one here under her lampshade. There's another one tucked under one of the drawers. It's a small baggie taped up. And if we look down here, Shauna's got a scale. You know, she likes to maintain her health in that way by having a healthy body weight. That's cool. But if we flip that over, pop open the battery compartment, we see some baggies of substances hiding there. That is not an unusual space for things to be stashed, not necessarily in the scale, but in anything with a battery compartment. So those are two of the pieces that I personally have found the most interesting and unexpected as hiding spots. So I like to show them off. But yeah,
Any questions?
Any questions?
Doesn't look like it, so I'm gonna have us end on time. I'm gonna do my outro. Guys, that was awesome. I'm really also impressed with the videography. Manny, well done. I know you are invisible, but it makes a big difference to be able to see what you're talking about. Great job.
Yeah.
All right, folks, this session will be recorded. We're going to send a PDF of the PowerPoint out to everyone. We have a couple of, I've posted links to the evaluation form and the certificate of attendance form in the chat box. Feel free to use that. I also want to remind you that we have still a couple more sessions left in this week. It's kind of amazing. We have one happening at 2 o'clock today that I'm moderating about harm reduction, just the concept of what it is. At 5 o'clock, we're talking about mindfulness in the Recovery Center in Kingston. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., it's going to be a pretty awesome, well-attended session about the role of law enforcement in substance use and recovery. And we're going to have a couple sheriffs talking about this, as well as a professor of criminal law. I expect that to be a great conversation. And at noon tomorrow, we have a psychologist from Bassett talking about providers prescribing buprenorphine to each other. So I want to encourage y'all to attend any and all of those. I think they're going to be really interesting. Thanks so much to Truth Pharm for the great work you do. And that's such a fluent and fascinating presentation. I'm super into it. All right, folks, thanks so much. And join us soon.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Julia.
Bye. Good to see you too, Alexis.